Have you ever looked into the eyes of the people who raised you and realized they were your enemies? That was me, standing in a courtroom facing the two people who gave me life and watching them try to destroy mine. They said I manipulated a dying man for money, but what they didn't know was that's behind something stronger than wealth. He left me the truth, and that truth would be the weapon that finally set me free. My name is Jess Rowe, and this is how karma came full circle. I grew up in a family that looked perfect from the outside, polished, smiling, elegant. The Rowe family name carried weight in our Oregon suburb. My mother, Linda Rowe, was a local socialite who never missed a fundraiser or photo opportunity. My father, Martin, was a businessman who loved being called self-made, even though most of his success came from borrowed money and broken promises. To neighbors, we were a picture of achievement. Inside our house, though, it was all performance. No warmth, no love, just rehearsed laughter echoing off marble floors. My mother used to say, "Perception is everything, Jessamine. People don't need to like you. They just need to envy you." I learned early that appearances mattered more than honesty. While my parents networked at cocktail parties, I buried myself in books. I was quiet, cautious, and a little too serious for their taste. "Lighten up," my father would say. "You're supposed to be charming, not thoughtful." The night I told them I'd earned a scholarship to Yale Law, my mother actually laughed. "Law?" she scoffed. "Honey, people study law when they can't sell or create. It's a field for moralists who don't understand power." She was wrong. I understood power, I just wanted to use it differently. So at 19, I left home with one suitcase, $200, and my grandmother's photo, the only person who ever told me I was worth something. Yale was supposed to be my escape, but it became something greater. That's where I met Professor Howard Winslow, a man who'd lost everything for refusing to protect corrupt politicians. He was brilliant, feared, and somehow still kind. One afternoon, after class, he stopped me and asked, "Do you believe justice can survive without kindness?" I said, "No. One without the other becomes cruelty." He smiled. "Then you might just survive this profession." That moment changed my life. From then on, I spent weekends at his riverside home, helping him sort old case files and repair the garden fence. Over cups of tea, he taught me more about truth than any textbook ever could. Somewhere in those quiet afternoons, he became the father I never had. Then, one evening, while sorting papers, I found something strange, a promissory note signed by my real father. It was years old. Professor Winslow had lent him money for a failed real estate deal. My heart sank. The man my parents mocked for being too moral had once saved them from financial ruin, and they never told me. When Professor Winslow passed away, I was by his side. Before his final breath, he whispered, "Promise me you'll never trade integrity for comfort, Jess." I promised, and I had no idea how quickly I'd be tested. A week after the funeral, I sat in his old house as the lawyer read his will. To everyone's shock, and my own, he left his estate, book royalties, and a scholarship fund in my name, not as a gift, as a trust, to continue his work teaching honesty and ethics. The next morning, the newspapers twisted the story. Young lawyer inherits millions from late professor. By evening, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was cold. "You let that old man manipulate you, Jess." "This is embarrassing for the family." I said, "He didn't manipulate me. He raised me." The line went dead. 3 days later, I was served a lawsuit. Plaintiffs, Martin and Linda Rowe. Defendant, Jessamine Rowe. Charge, coercion, and undue influence on a mentally impaired elder. My knees went weak. My own parents were suing me for the inheritance I never asked for. And when I saw the lawyer's name, my blood ran cold. Harold Fisk. The same man Professor Winslow had once fired for falsifying evidence. It was all clear now. Fisk wanted revenge, and my parents wanted money. The day of the pretrial hearing, I walked through the courthouse doors with my heart pounding. Reporters crowded the steps. Cameras flashed. My parents looked like actors in a tragedy, dressed in black, heads bowed, pretending to mourn their reputation. When the judge, Elliot Carr, entered the courtroom, his eyes lingered on me for a second. We'd worked together years ago. He once told me I was one of the last few who still care about the truth. That memory gave me strength. Fisk stood up first, his voice polished and venomous. "My clients," he said smoothly, "only seek justice. They were robbed of affection and inheritance by their manipulative daughter." The word sliced through me like glass. But I said nothing. Silence, I learned, was the one thing my parents couldn't control. When Fisk handed the medical document, claiming Winslow was mentally impaired, I studied the paper closely. The doctor's signature belonged to someone who'd been dead for 2 years. "Your Honor," I said, standing calmly, "this document is a forgery." The seal was retired in 2016. Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge's brow furrowed. "Withdraw the exhibit," he ordered. For the first time I saw my mother's perfect poise crack. Her signature eye roll vanished, replaced by panic. That night I couldn't sleep. Winslow had always been careful, deliberate. He must have known something like this could happen. The next day, I drove back to his riverside home. The air smelled of rain and old books. Inside, the house was frozen in time. Law journals stacked high, a half-played piano, teacups gathering dust. As I walked through his study, one floorboard creaked louder than the rest. When I pressed down, it lifted slightly. Beneath it was a small tin box labeled in his handwriting, "If they come for you, Jess, let this speak." Inside were a letter and a USB drive. The letter read, "Elliot Carr will know what to do. If this reaches court, let this be your shield." I plugged the USB into my laptop. The screen lit up. Winslow's recorded testimony. "If you're watching this," he began, voice steady, "it means those I once trusted are trying to twist what's true. I leave my estate to Jess Rowe not because she asked, but because she never did." Tears filled my eyes. For the first time since the lawsuit began, I felt peace. The next hearing drew a packed courtroom, reporters, cameras, flashing lights. My parents entered hand in hand pretending to grieve. Fisk smiled like a man who thought he'd already won. When he finished his opening, I stood. "Your Honor," I said, "the court deserves to hear Professor Winslow's own words." The lights dimmed. The video played. Winslow's calm face filled the screen. "Jess Rowe stood by me when others only showed up for the inheritance." The room went silent. My mother's eyes widened. My father looked away. Fisk stammered, trying to regain control. "Ms. Rowe, did you love this man beyond filial respect?" "I did," I said softly. "He was the only adult who ever taught me what respect means." You could hear the air shift. Even the judge looked moved. Moments later, Judge Carr lifted an old envelope. "This court has received a verified letter from the late Professor Winslow," he said. He began reading aloud. "If this ever reaches you, know that I trusted Jess Rowe not with wealth, but with the integrity I no longer see in this profession. She is my heir, not of blood, of character." The courtroom fell silent. Fisk's face drained of color. My parents' perfect facade crumbled before the cameras. "The court finds the will legally sound," Judge Carr declared. "The claims of undue influence are baseless." Case dismissed, and just like that, justice was served. Outside the courthouse, microphones surrounded me. Jess, any comment? Will you sue your parents? Will you write a book? I just smiled and said, integrity doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs to be lived. Then I walked away. A week later, my mother showed up at my gate. She didn't call my name. She just left an envelope. A photo of me at 8 years old wearing a paper graduation cap, her hand resting awkwardly on my shoulder. I didn't cry. I placed it in a box labeled, Things I've Outgrown. Months passed. I rebuilt my life quietly. Then, one evening, I received an email from Judge Carr. You upheld the part of Howard I never could. There may be a bench opening in 2 years. I hope you'll consider. 2 years later, I did. At 32, I became the youngest judge in Oregon. My first case? A young woman accused by her relatives of manipulating an old man for money. She walked into my courtroom trembling. Did you stand by him when no one else did? I asked. She nodded. Then, I believe, you, I said. Sometimes revenge doesn't need anger, destruction, or shouting. Sometimes revenge is living the life they said you couldn't, and proving that integrity outlasts every lie. If you believe in karma, justice, and truth winning in the end, then hit that subscribe button and join us here on Top Revenge Diaries, where every story reminds us that sometimes doing the right thing is the best revenge.